Imagine a security flaw sitting in one of the most locked down operating systems on the planet, undetected for 27 years. Nobody found it. Not governments, not billion-dollar bug bounty programs, not elite red teams. Then an AI model found it in an afternoon. That's not a hypothetical. That's what just happened. And it wasn't just one bug. On April 7th, 2026, Anthropic announced Project Glasswing, a coalition including Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Cisco, CrowdStrike, JP Morgan Chase, and the Linux Foundation. Their mission: use a new, unreleased AI model called Claude Mythos Preview to hunt for security vulnerabilities in the world's most critical software before attackers can exploit them. Anthropic is putting up to $100 million in compute credits behind the effort, plus $4 million in direct funding to open source security organizations. But the money isn't the headline. The headline is what Mythos actually did. In just a few weeks of testing, Mythos Preview discovered thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities, meaning flaws that nobody knew existed, across every major operating system and every major web browser. Let that land for a second. Every major OS, every major browser. Some specific highlights? It found a 27-year-old integer overflow in OpenBSD, an operating system whose entire identity is being secure. It found a 16-year-old flaw in FFmpeg that had survived over 5 million automated tests. And it found a 17-year-old remote code execution bug in FreeBSD's NFS server that would let anyone on the internet gain full root access to the machine. No authentication required. That bug had been sitting in production systems worldwide since 2009. Mythos didn't just find these bugs. It autonomously wrote working exploits for them. In one case, it chained 4 separate vulnerabilities together, wrote a JIT heap spray, and escaped both the browser's renderer sandbox and the OS sandbox. No human guidance, no handholding. It was given a prompt and left to run overnight. We've had automated security tools for years. Fuzzers, static analyzers, SAST, DAST. What makes this different is the gap between Mythos and its own predecessor. Anthropic's previous top model, Claude Opus 4.6, had a near zero success rate at turning discovered bugs into working exploits. Mythos jumped to over 70%. On Firefox's JavaScript engine alone, Opus 4.6 managed 2 successful exploits out of hundreds of attempts. Mythos managed 181. And critically, Anthropic says they didn't specifically train Mythos to do this. The security capabilities emerged as a side effect of making it better at coding and reasoning in general. That's the part that should make you sit up straight. Get good enough at understanding code, and hacking becomes a downstream skill.
Now, Anthropic is framing this as a defensive play. Find the bugs before attackers do. Patch them, make everyone safer. And that's a legitimate argument. But there's an obvious other side to this coin. If one model can find thousands of critical bugs this fast, what happens when a less careful organization or a nation-state builds something comparable? Anthropic itself acknowledged the dual-use problem. The same improvements that make Mythos great at patching vulnerabilities also make it great at exploiting them. There's also a practical concern. Over 99% of the vulnerabilities Mythos found are still unpatched right now. Finding bugs faster doesn't automatically mean they get fixed faster. Open source maintainers, many of them volunteers, are already overwhelmed. Flooding them with thousands of critical bug reports could make that worse before it gets better. It's also worth noting that not everyone is fully sold. Researchers at a security firm called Isle took the specific vulnerabilities Anthropic showcased, isolated the relevant code, and ran them through much smaller, cheaper AI models. They found that even a model with only 3.6 billion parameters, a fraction of Mythos' size, could detect the flagship FreeBSD vulnerability. Their argument: the discovery part may not be as exclusive as the announcement implies. The exploit building side is where the frontier capability really lives. And some observers have noted the timing. The launch coincided with Anthropic hitting a revenue milestone and reports of a potential IPO later this year. Project Glasswing is genuinely useful for the industry and also very good marketing. Here's the bottom line. For decades, critical infrastructure has been running on software riddled with holes that the best human hackers in the world couldn't find. And AI just found thousands of them in weeks. Whether this is the dawn of a safer internet or the opening of Pandora's box probably depends on what happens next and how fast the rest of the world catches up. This story is just getting started, and we'll be watching it closely.